Good evening, everybody. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7:00 p.m. on Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. Meeting details and the draft agenda were also posted on our Township website. Please stand to salute the flag.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Cohen.
Here.
Mr. Cosgrove.
Here.
Mr. Sacramandi.
Here.
Mr. Stoller.
Present.
Mayor Romano.
Here. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve the January 7, 2025 Township Committee minutes?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Okay, reports. Committeeman Sacramandi, do you want to go first?
Not really.
Okay, you don't have to. Committeeman Cosgrove?
No report, thank you.
Committeeman Stoller?
I have plenty of reports. Okay, Recreation Committee, pool, golf, tennis, pickleball memberships are now open. If you haven't seen the new pickleball courts, they're fantastic with lights. Discounts 10% off are available if you purchase a tennis/pickleball or golf membership with your pool membership. Registration for spring and summer programs are still open. Limited spots remaining, they're filling up quick. And then the Euro Park LED light project is moving along. The basketball court LED retrofitting is complete. So you can play ball during any hours. Let's go to SID Special Improvement. Super Bowl's on Sunday. Encourage all residents who are staying local, shop local, dine local, celebrate the big game. Menus are out. Make sure your catering orders are in advance so you get your order on time. Explore is hosting a business listening session at 6 p.m. on February 11th via Zoom. The link has been distributed to all businesses and property owners. You can get it off the website or you can email Steve for it. Sidewalk Cafe licenses are live and can be applied for. Explore has been distributing the forms via email, and they are also accessible in the clerk's office on the website or at the clerk's office. And then Restaurant Week is back and will start on March 24th. Explore are working hard on recruiting participants. It was a runaway success last year. We expect over 40 restaurants to join again as they did last year, and we'll keep you up to date on that. BOE. The big update there was we had a forum on Sunday afternoon with Dr. Diskin and Mr. Connolly and the board, engaging with 80 residents, and it lasted 2.5 hours. A lot of good questions, a lot of good responses. Just a fantastic coming together of people. Other Finance Subcommittee. Finance Subcommittee, Michael and I met with Matt Laracy and Alex and others to go over several financial related matters, initial discussions about the future of solid waste services and the COH fee ordinance. These topics took some time. It'll be initially vetted through this group and then presented to the Township Committee. We're expecting introduction of the municipal budget in April with adoption and consideration in May. Mountain Valley Emergency Communication Center, that's our dispatch. 911 dispatch, emergency dispatch. We set our meetings for 2025. At the last Township Committee, we authorized the MVECC to execute another 10-year lease with New Providence. The authorization was also completed by the City of Summit with Mayor Fagan and Jamel Boyer is also on this committee. There'll be a lot of important work for the board this year, and we look forward to a continued partnership with Summit and the MVECC. Joint fields, no update. Flood mitigation update. Now, apparently I'm a city kid, so I didn't really realize there's a big difference between a pond and a lake, but just we make that on the list when I see a big body of water. I saw that she's big body of water next time. Work on potential Chatham Road retention area. It's going to ease flooding in the Glenwood and Washington sections. It's moving forward as the team selects one of the 3 firms bidding. The next key action to mitigate flooding in downtown Milburn and Main Street will come from the Orange Reservoir enhancements, as you've heard me discuss, for planned completion in 2026. I think that about wraps it up. Thank you.
I have a question. For the flood mitigation, the bid covers how far? Is it just the initial design, or how far is going out for bid?
For the reservoir?
For the project in former Chatham Road.
I think it's going out, well, I think it's gonna be a bid for the entire project to start, right?
Yeah, it's a feasibility study. It's
It's just a feasibility study.
correct, and sort of an initial, like that obviously leads into an initial design, but it's a feasibility study of whether a detention area would work.
So it just, so that, and then there's a decision point after that to how, assuming it would work, there would be a decision point as to how that would get done.
Correct.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Collins?
Sure. What then covers the finance committee, the planning board meeting that would have happened from the last meeting was canceled, but there is one tomorrow. The Phi Center is still on the agenda. It's tomorrow at 7:30 in this room. I don't know that this will be the last meeting. Frankly, I don't think it will be, but you're certainly welcome to attend. The other thing, the library,
Just a question, is there a deadline on when they have to make a decision by?
every meeting both sides have to agree for an extension, because it should have been done per the law in 45 days, and we are way over that. So every meeting, both parties have to agree to extend the deadline, and so far that's what we've been doing. But we do it one meeting at a time, because that's what their attorney requests. The library, the bids for the second floor renovation will be opened on February 6th at 2 p.m. in the auditorium. It's open to the public. And so they've gotten a bunch of bids, and we'll be choosing the lowest bidder. And that's it.
Thank you. Committeeman Second Mandy?
Sure. The Citizens Affordable Housing Committee is going to be having a public meeting via Zoom on the 20th of this month. We're going to have a planner at that meeting, and I believe a representative from our legal counsel as well. So if you're interested, make sure to tune in. I think the EC has had a meeting since we last met, and the planning board was covered, so that's about it.
Thank you. So I just want to report that we are the proud recipient of a community block grant from the County of Essex in the amount of $75,000. And that money will be used for various ADA and sidewalk improvements on Blaine Street and Ridgewood Road. So I just wanted to, I see Mr. Camacho is not here, but I just wanted to thank the county exec and the Board of Commissioners and everyone involved in making that happen. And also Opportunity Project received $14,000 today for their programs and services. So that was great news today. And also, I believe we're going to have somebody from the Dranikoff family during public comment, just to announce that they're having their 8th annual March 4th 5K on Sunday, March 2nd. To raise awareness to colon cancer, which is in March. So I think he'll be on the line so he can give us some more information. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on the community development block grant, with the $75,000, it's currently in being designed for the ADA or barrier-free accessible ramps. Again, that's Ridgewood and Ivy, Blaine and Church, Blaine and Rector, Hobart and Coniston, Hobart and South, Hobart and North, and Hobart and Taylor will be covered by that grant. So as we've mentioned in years past, we were in a cycle of every year receiving this money, but now we've gone to an every 2-year cycle so that we can have a larger project and get more funding, as well as more areas done at the same time. Just an update on the Safe Routes to Schools grant, in which the township received $599,000 for accessibility from the other side of South Orange Avenue, to the Deerfield School. There will be a sidewalk installation on Old Short Hills Road, which is a county road and the county right of way. Survey work is going to start on that project, and then there's going to be a kickoff meeting with the NV5, who is the consultant, and certainly the DOT, who is administering the grant. Just wanted to make an announcement to the community that the township will be starting a construction blotter. This will be very similar to a police blotter. However, this will be a blotter that lists those individuals or construction companies generally that are in violation or receive a summons from the township for doing work without a permit, doing work without inspections, and other such infractions that result in a monetary penalty against that company. Again, I think the hope here is that those that are working in town and generally ask for forgiveness are more concerned about their reputation, that this blotter will be made public, and that they won't do those things in the first place. So that's going to come out. First one's going to be the end of February. We'll see how that goes. Just a quick update on the parking ad hoc committee, which met on Monday. We discussed the levels of permitting. We are back getting pretty close to pre-pandemic levels in terms of number of commuter permits issued. I think we are already at over 1,000 permits issued for 2025. Levels for business permit parking and other permits are generally the same. The shopper parking, parking still becoming more and more popular each year. So that's a great permit that's offered by the township for our residents, that should you not want to feed the meter, you can purchase that permit and just park in the downtown and utilize that, or any business district, quite honestly. We are talking about the G-Techna rollout, which is going to be a LPR enforcement tool for parking, and also will move us towards permitless permitting, so people won't have to put permits on their vehicles, and the LPR enforcement system will just read whether a person has a valid permit as they drive through the lot. It'll improve efficiency in terms of enforcement. It'll allow PBOs to address other issues and things like that in town. But that will be sort of a slow rollout through 2025. We discussed some issues on Chatham Road parking, particularly when it comes to business permit parking, some solutions there that we're working on. And we also talked about parking deck utilization. Interestingly enough, we have 93 spaces allocated for business permit parking, and the average is 35 in terms of usage. So we're discussing ways to not only incentivize potentially, getting business permit parkers in there, but also shoppers, and utilizing that deck to its full capability, which is going to be a big focus this year, as well as trying to get those individuals who work in, maybe are employed in a business or work in a business to park off the street, so that can be opened up to shoppers. So that was a large point of discussion with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cantor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I have no report tonight, but if any committee then has a question, committee person has a question, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, public comment. When invited to speak to offer your comments, please come to the lectern and clearly state your name and whether you are a Milburn resident and or property or business owner. Please do not provide your full address, seeing our meetings are recorded and readily available to the public. For the convenience of our community, there's a remote option. If you called in and would like to comment, please press *6 now. If you are attending by computer or electronic device, please click the raise hand button and be sure your video is on when you comment. All members of the public wishing to speak will be put into the queue to address the committee. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers shall limit their comments to 1 3-minute session. You will be prompted when there's 30 seconds remaining. A reminder that this is not a time for dialogue or to debate a matter, and this is a time during our business meeting for the public to offer comments. I will now open the public comment period. So we're going to go online real quick because Jeremy's on, Mr. Dramkoff. Hi, Jeremy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Dranikoff. I really appreciate you giving me a few minutes to speak. Thank you, Mayor Romano and Steve Grilla and the Township Committee. I really appreciate it. Just so everyone knows, so I am the founder and race director of March 4th, as briefly mentioned. We are an annual 5K that takes place on the corner of Brookside and Glen, right by the Milburn Library in town. This is our 8th annual 5K run walk that we're doing on Sunday, March 2nd this year. This event was started 8 years ago by my family and I, when my mom, Joanna, a Milburn resident, died of colon cancer on March 4th of 2016. And each year we've been doing everything we can to prevent that from happening to anyone else ever again. And with that, we are pushing for as many participants as we can, as many dollars raised, and as many people tested for colon cancer as humanly possible. We're calling on individuals of the town as well as businesses to partner with us for sponsorship, and anything else you can do to help us spread our word and make sure that this never happens to anyone ever again. I really encourage everyone to check out our website at march4th.org, or feel free to reach out to me, jeremydranikoff@gmail.com. Or shoot me a text at 908-477-1339, since this is recorded. And I hope that you guys all come on Sunday. I'm really looking forward to it. And again, thank you so much and appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody else online? Over there?
No hands yet.
No, okay. Anyone from the audience?
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld. I live in the public section for more than 32 years. Other comments today, they're put in the context of the Friday's announcement by our AG about an announcement for a trust commission, which is pretty unique. And also Sunday was the last published edition of the Star Ledger, and I referred you to the harsh editorial and op-eds that appeared. And also regarding round 3, the Belleville public notices. Sunday's New York Times had a very interesting op-ed by David Brooks. In the last few days, the New York Times has been writing, like today, Brent Stevens, about what does it mean with no Star Ledger, about being a watchdog, about local wrongdoing. And that takes me to tonight's agenda, which is like my annual questions regarding the bond anticipation note resolution 25057. Really, to analyze this, we need our annual debt statement, which is usually dated, is as of December 31st of 2024, and usually it's due as of the last day of January. And to really understand this resolution, you need to know what our debt was. And when you compare the amount of our ban for this year compared to last year's, it's about $3 million more. Like, who is the lender who's buying these? What is the new interest rate? And what projects are included in this, and which ones were satisfied? I can't tell that without that information, and it just seems to be the same pattern for the last 5 years. I come here and they ask it regarding about transparency, robust, informed transparency. In particular, on December 20th of last year, we completed the Paper Mill Playhouse acquisition. I mean, through Oprah, I got the HUD statement, but how do we fund it? How do we fund the East Willow Court? And I think those are the information that the public should have, how we funded these transactions. As before, I've sent you various heads up questions. We haven't heard it. We have our mayor. I think it's time for her to respond about whether she receives a stipend for serving on the Joint Counties Committee, and how come we never get reports regarding about that entity that she serves on. I'll speak later, but again, I have copies of the articles that appeared. And again, I invite and I offer my assistance in our round 3 litigation, because it seems that we have a new judge in that case. That's Judge Russo. I think everyone knows my history with Judge Russo, how he recused himself from the Bear Properties case. And I think when I made the reference to the Bellevue various public notices that were in Sunday's Star Ledger, please look at them.
Thank you.
Charles Van Barra, Milburn Short Hills resident for 28 years. On the subject of parking permits, I know there's times where I go in for the day with one of my daughters, or my wife will go in and we look for a place to park. And I talked to the town hall and I did get a resident permit, but don't forget about people like me and us. And when we go in for a day into New York City, reserve some parking spaces for residents that want to get a special permit and go in for the day. So we don't get ticketed for being over 2 hours. The other thing, I've always spoken from my heart and tried to be sincere. So I have to speak from my heart now. Last year, I stood here at this podium, very proud of our township committee and its members for showing a genuine concern for nonpartisanship in the mayoral and deputy mayoral elections and in the teamwork that you exemplified. And I held Mayor Romano especially in high esteem when you stated, and it's recorded as such, that you stepped down to avoid conflict of interest. Watch the recording. I was really disappointed. I almost spoke at the end of last meeting, but I decided to go home and look at the recording and make sure. To hear Mayor Romano change her reasoning and say it was due to the workload and not conflict of interest. And I just have to say, I found that to be a blow to the high esteem in which I held you, Mayor. I thought you were doing the right thing for the right reasons, and it turns out now I'm learning otherwise. I expressed my concern at the last Township Committee meeting about the SID elections and that very same topic of conflict of interest. And my recommendation very strongly was to avoid a conflict of interest between a party chair and an important position like the head of the SID, the chairperson of the SID. And contrary to my recommendations and several others who stood here, and contrary to what Committeeman Stoller recommended, the SID went ahead and voted the Democratic Party chair as head of the SID. I'm really disappointed to learn that. I've lost a lot of respect for the SID, and I've lost a lot of trust in you.
Thank you.
Jay Morelli, Township resident. I'd like to start by thanking all the committee members for their service to the community. And kudos to Alex on the presentation on legal expenses last meeting. I've got some questions there, but let me come back to that. I'd first like to comment on last meeting's discussion on what boards, committees, commissions, political party leads, and elected party committee members, for that matter, should be on. I think it's a great question and commend Committeeman Stoller for raising the question. But rather than speak about a specific individual on a specific board, why not take a holistic approach? Why not sit down and put forward a statement of principles and values? I know that is almost certainly unconstitutional to pass any sort of ordinance or resolution declaring who is or isn't allowed to be on a board or a committee based on belonging to a particular political committee, but perhaps a proclamation stating the values that you as a township council believe would be okay. That may remove some of the partisan aspects of the discussion by making it clear that the principles apply to everyone. Back to the legal expenses. I went back in my archive and I pulled out the legal presentation from 2013 to 2020. Alex is smiling, he knows what's coming. It starts with the same page on the different categories, and the decks are almost identical with one exception. And that is on the second page of the deck from 2013 to 2020. In that deck, it shows total legal cost per year for every year from 2013 to 2020. It shows what the total cost over the period was. It shows the amount that was reimbursed, and it shows the annual cost for legal services. There is no such page in this document. And while the categories for expenses are broken out for 3 of the categories, we do not get a holistic picture of the cost, nor can we derive from the information in here what the total costs per year are. So my question is, what were the total legal expenses for the years 2021 to 2024? And why isn't there an equivalent chart in the deck? Just curious, I'm not insinuating anything. I'm simply asking why those costs aren't here and what those costs were. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Diane Eglow, Milburn resident. So I have a list of questions. I've been wondering, what is the construction on JFK and how long that is going on for? Please consider reasonably sized raised bump outs at Whittingham and Milburn Avenue. The plastic barriers are ugly and do not prevent double parking as intended. They also catch all the dirt and the sandbags. It's just unsightly. And importantly, this would provide a safer crossing raised for pedestrians. A few weeks ago, I had sent Allison Canfield and Alex pictures of the Hessian House. And it's really concerning since the historic designation was forced upon them a few years ago. The house is falling in disrepair. What are the rules? I mean, and I've been sent pictures from other people who want to remain anonymous. Thank you for the crosswalk install in Ivy update. Old pet peeve of mine, the area behind the Standard looks like hell. This is what everyone sees when they're walking along the bridge on Milburn Avenue. They put up a fence which is broken and does not function as a real barrier. Again, are there not rules for upkeep? The paths in Taylor Park are crumbling and are even too narrow for two people to walk comfortably side by side. Is there a plan to redo and widen all the paths in the park? And that includes the Rose Garden. We had a beautiful plan that would have redone the Rose Garden for 1.7 million. People went crazy, yet 7 million handed to the paper mill. This all goes to town pride. For a town of our wealth and reputation, why is Milburn Avenue looking so run down with broken brick paths? Years and years. I'd like to suggest again that a link to these TC meetings are added to the bottom of the Friday mayor messages. I don't know why, it would be very easy. You might get some more people than the 7 or 8 who come every week. Onto 9 Main Street. I propose that we stop spending millions, might be an exaggeration, of dollars fighting the inevitable. Instead, consider renegotiating with RPM to develop all of the DPW site on Essex Street. DPW will have to be moved at some point. Make this a coordinated project that has many benefits. This would prevent the offensive too many 100% affordable housing. Frank, you know the plan. Lastly, I'll speak about the High Center application, which fits the zoning rules passed for a house of worship. The comments, insinuations, and innuendos that are online and at public meetings are shameful, especially from a few of our residents who I will not call out their name. It's just horribly insulting. Let the application go through the process at the planning board where it belongs.
Thank you.
Wait for public comments and stop inciting such hate.
Got it. Hi there, I'm Jane Gomez, a 25-year Milburn resident. Nice to see you all. I am here today to ask you to consider putting in audible traffic signals in the downtown area. I don't know if any of you have been to Morristown, but when you stop at a traffic light in Morristown, it tells you when to go. This would not only help blind and visually impaired people, but it would also help the newcomers to our town that don't really understand the traffic patterns. It would help the middle schoolers and high schoolers that come into town, the texters, the people who want to take advantage of all the great restaurants, Carly. The people who want to take advantage of all the great restaurants. Milburn has always been concerned about the safety in the downtown area. With so much growth, so many exciting new commercial entities coming in, new apartments, new traffic, I think retrofitting traffic lights would be a not that expensive solution And it may really save lives and make this even more of an attractive place to come and spend time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Christine Best, 15 Fairfield Terrace. I just had a couple of questions. Alex, I believe on the December 17th meeting, might have been a different date, Frank had asked you to answer a list of questions that I asked you to answer in regards to the High Center. And I had sent that out to the entire team here on the dais, and I haven't gotten a response from you yet because they're continuing to violate the settlement agreement. And also, I also wanted to understand why the township gave back the $500,000 in violations for one, I think was reduced down to $1,000. And I think that's really, really important because we want to have transparency and not give favoritism to one group or another and discriminate against homeowners that live in a neighborhood there would be an expectation of residential-like activity, particularly in light of the 1898 deed restrictions. And I continue to do quite a bit of research about the legality of deed restrictions. And the reason why I'm bringing it to you and not the planning board is I want you to understand that the township has the right and can enforce deed restrictions, especially when it's been handed down in 2014 by the Chancery Division, enter plaintiff for the judgment on Virginia Welch and her property. And it was also reiterated legally, I believe in 2018, 2019. And they provided quite a bit of evidence. You'd explained to me that there was no evidence of any violation of deed restrictions, but there was quite a bit of evidence that was brought forth in multiple cases and continues to be brought forth on Facebook pages, et cetera, where they're violating. And it's so, I want to know, can I violate things in my house and throw parties late at night and do whatever I want to do? And can I do that? Because it's not fair to other residents. It's not fair to people that have the expectation to live in peace in their homes. It's not fair to do that to people. So I just want to bring that to your attention. I also just want to read a couple things. You were unaware that the High Center continued its operations with little changes. After it exhausted its appeal, counsel for Welch, that's the Welch family at 165 Wiltshire Hills Road, sent cease and desist letters in 2018 and 2019. And Alex, I do think you had mentioned to me that that you guys had some kind of agreement. I know that Jackie Lieberberg signed the settlement agreement because she was the acting mayor at the time. I'm not sure who voted yes or no on it, but I think Miss Iglo was involved in the offline settlement agreement that there's no paper recording of. Maybe she wasn't.
Excuse me.
I wasn't talking to you.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, I'd like to understand more about that because I actually think that we owe equal opportunity to all people of this town.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Okay. So I will now close public comment. Mr. Feld? I do get a stipend. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's public record, so feel free to look it up. Mr. Bombara, there are spaces at the library for commuters, for residents that want to go into the city for a day. I don't think they're all being used, but I haven't gone into the city in a while, so I'm really not sure. The barriers at the UPS store are temporary. So, that's just a temporary thing until we figure out what we're doing. And the audible traffic signals, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, just some changes with pedestrian crossings and lighting and everything else. So it is a work in progress. It does take a long time, but we are discussing it. So hopefully if I can report something positive in the near future, in a couple of months, I hope I can. So let's see where that goes. Who wants to begin? Maria Masala?
All right, thank you all for coming out tonight. Appreciate your presence. So Christine Best, I believe there's a lot more between that 500K versus 1K that you're talking about. I think it would be good to get a full record and accounting of what happened. And if there is participation by any other people, then we can go through it.
Mr. Silver, with all due respect, I don't even know what she's referring to, so like,
Oh,
if she
okay.
has to explain in
Oh,
detail.
yeah, so maybe you can submit a written request to the township committee to Alex, Mr. McDonald, and request exactly what you're asking. Because it just seems very salacious when you're coming up with 500K versus 1,000. I'm sure there's a lot of exogenous variables that all occurred at the same time. Whatever happened to Ms. Iglo, Ms. Lieberberg, I don't know. But now I do want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. Right? I'll let Alex answer the funding of East Willow Paper Mill. I think it's just part of our normal finance operations. What else do we have here? Audible alerts, as I've said, I'm all for audible alerts. Anything we can do to improve safety in this town. Ms. Iglo, they'll answer the constant instruction on Eisenhower and such. And as we go forward, and I cannot say how proud I am of the township committee and the changes we made last year and the contributions to our town that we made. Everything from the paper mill to the SID to a new town hall to precipitous drop in crime that was staring us in the face. All these different things happened, and we improve every single week, every single month, and I commend everyone's contribution.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Well, you can obviously count me in on the audible traffic signals, of course. As far as Mr. Morreale's comment on the presentation, I'm sure putting together that slide that wasn't there is something you can do, and it's something that we should have. So I'd like to see that, and that's it.
Can you make a second, Mandy?
Sure, so I would support looking into the cost of getting audible traffic signals as well. So I think that's at least 3 people on this dais that has asked for that. So Alex, I trust that you'll take that under advisement and look into that. Let's see, Ms. Iglo, I find it ironic that you're asking about the state of the Hessian House, since from what I recall, it was you that wanted to tear that thing down at some point. So that's interesting, but is that a town-owned asset, Alex? It's not, okay, so I'm not responsible for it. Let's see, Ms. Best, we did receive your list of questions. I was hoping that Mr. McDonald would provide answers to some of those. Did you?
You did. And I got this afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, one at a
Sorry,
time. Thank you.
I missed that. Additionally, like Mr. Stoller, I would like to know if there's any sort of agreement that was going on with the High Center, either written or unofficially. I know that there recently have been some enforcement activities to, monitor that area. But, I don't know why enforcement is only happening now if there's been some sort of agreement in place for an extended period of time, and they're violating it in any way, shape, or form. That should be taken care of. That's it.
Committeeman Cosgrove?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I agree with the traffic signal aspect that we, to look into that. Mr. Morreale's request about looking at the code of conduct, so to speak, I think that's a good idea. I think that may get touched upon on new business. The paths in Taylor Park, I do think the asphalt paths could use a little work. Those are my only thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. McDonald?
As Committeeman Stoller noted, the The bond anticipation note that's being sold is for a variety of projects, inclusive of 22 East Willow, as well as our road reconstruction projects that are being financed. We have this conversation each year, and certainly, Mr. Feld has heard the explanation not only from myself but also from Matt Laracy, who is the Township CFO. The annual debt statement is on the website, and so I'm sorry. So you can take a look at that, and certainly if you have any questions, let me know. All right. Mr. Bambera, parking lot 9 has about close to 90 spaces for all-day parking, $10 a piece. You just pay at the pay station right in the lot. There are also approximately, with a resident sticker, thank you, Mayor. You must have a resident sticker. And there are approximately, I believe, 12 to 15 in lot 3 in the Short Hills train station that operate the same way. Resident sticker, pay $10, take the train into the city, park all day. Mr. Moriali, no problem. I'll certainly put together that slide deck. I also owe Mr. Sacamandi some additional information as the cost of the particular individual in the town that does Oprah requests and things like that. So I'll make that part of the same. Great. Ms. Eglo, the construction on JFK, great question. Great project, actually. As you know, JFK floods, and this is a mitigation of that poor drainage in that area. So that is county work being done. I do not have a timeline on it, but I will certainly reach out and see what the expectation is in terms of the construction. But certainly a much needed and a project up there. As far as the Hessian House goes, I think they're under the same pretense as everybody else. So if there's a peeling paint issue, it's a certain percentage of the house that needs to be peeling, and then can be enforced by code enforcement. But we'll have somebody go take a look. And then as far as the Whittingham bump out and the brick and the trees and all of that, this was all part of a wider look at the downtown and how things would be improved in the rest of the town. And so I think that, given the amount of conversation around it, and, it might be an opportunity, I'm not going to say the word, but certainly to do improvements, streetscape improvements, whether that's, and just to add to my reports from previous, we are planning a spring planting of 28 street trees on both Milburn Avenue, Essex Street, and Upper Milburn Avenue. So looking forward to that, and some improving streetscape there. But you got to look at pedestrian scale lighting, the sidewalks, getting rid of the red brick, that type of stuff. These are much larger, wider projects. Bumping out at Whittingham, we are evaluating the idea, just an idea of having angled parking further up Milburn Avenue, which would provide that sort of protection to a bump out at Whittingham. So that more to come on that, and certainly more to discuss with the Township Committee on all of that. But in terms of Miss Best's questions and matters around 1 Jefferson, the High Center, things like that. So I did answer some of your 20 questions that you had sent, those that could be easily answered. I remind the community and certainly the Township Committee that the township is involved in a federal RLUIPA case with the same entity, and we need to be careful and judicious about the way that we answer these questions. Certainly when it comes to 1 Jefferson, I mean, people say stuff and assume I know what they're talking about, and I'm happy to look into things, but to say $500,000 was reduced to $1,000, I don't know what that means unless you're providing me a specific example. Did this have to do with construction fines? Did this have to do with the fire that took place in 2017? I don't know. So I think and also whose discretion was that? And so I think there needs to just be a little bit more information than just getting up and saying, $500,000 was reduced to 1,000. It may be true. I don't know, but there's got to be some more specifics to it. And I am going to be cautious in my answering of the questions, given the fact that there is a planning board application, there is a RLUIPA case against the township. But to answer the enforcement question again, look, we have done enforcement, particularly now that we have a part-time code enforcement officer that's up there on Saturdays when a lot of this activity is taking place. They have noticed a abundance of cars on Saturday morning. However, the settlement agreement states, and this is a public document, states that there's not allowed to be more than 15 cars on the property. There were 18, and family cars are exempted from it. So there are aspects of the settlement agreement, and I think Ms. Bess actually brought this up in her email, that are a little bit ambiguous, a little bit contradictory, and make it very difficult to enforce. We have sent a warning letter, and we will take it from there. As far as why things weren't done in the past, I had stated it before, and the reason that we're doing it now is we've had constructive and complaints about the activity up there. I've been sent, a variety of different things. A lot of things have been said, or you heard this, or people have complained about this on Facebook, or those aren't direct complaints. And I know you don't feel like we should operate on a complaint basis, but there is a degree that we do. And so that is sort of the answer to that. And I'm sure I'll be asked again, and we'll continue to do that. But and I'm happy to get more information on any of the questions that surround it, if it is judicious to do so, given the situation that the township is in. We talk a lot about sort of the responsibility of all of us up here to just sort of put things out there, answer questions that may be used against us in a RLUIPA case. I don't think would be in the best interest of the community as a whole. So, but also continue to sift through those questions and answer where we can. That is all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cantor.
I have nothing to add, Mayor, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you. The Township Committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. A reminder that Resolution 25-056 pertaining to raffles has been updated, and the updated copy has been made available to the committee and the public. Are there any comments from the committee in regard to any items listed on the consent agenda? May I have a motion to approve Resolution 24-050 through Resolution 25056, which are listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Cosgrove?
Yes.
Mr. Sacamandi?
Yes.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any comments from the committee in regard to Resolution 25-057? May I have a motion to approve 25-057? May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Cosgrove?
Yes.
Mr. Sacamandi?
Yes.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes. Are there any comments from the committee in regard to Resolution 25-058?
Mayor, I do have some comments.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna vote no on that if there's a motion in a second. That particular tenant, the town has a lease with. My reading the terms of that lease require the tenant to maintain and repair both of those parking lots in their entirety. I do not think we should be assuming this obligation. I think doing it can also prejudice us in the future if there was ever a dispute over the language of the lease and who's responsible for the repairs and maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question. I just want to confirm that this authorization to go out for bids for lots B and C is a project that was voted through and identified in our discussions on the paper mill in support of the capital campaign, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this project addresses drainage, lighting, parking surfaces, safety, and potentially grading the lots, the icing that continues, the issues with icing as a result of the poor drainage and the topography. I just want to confirm that this process puts us in compliance with local public contracts law that govern the expenditure of public funds. It's just basically checking the box on procedure, correct? Is there anything new that I'm not following?
No.
Okay, so there's nothing above and beyond the original vote and authorization last year. This is just following the law. Okay, and then any additional projects and similar authorizations that are forthcoming underneath the paper mill that we've approved previous is the same thing for contract law or municipal contract law.
They will come before the township committee to authorize it.
Okay, so I just want to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, given those questions, I have an additional comment. Mr. McDonald, it is the tenant's responsibility to maintain those walls and those parking lots, correct, under the lease?
It does state that in the lease.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I mean, again, I would just say, and you have made your point about what impact that may have, but it doesn't necessarily preclude the municipality from making those improvements, given its township property.
May I have a motion to approve resolution 25-058?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second,
Roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Cohen,
yes.
Mr. Cosgrove,
No,
Mr. Sacamandi,
No.
Mr. Stoller,
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano.
Yes. Okay.
The resolution passed.
Oh, thank you. Okay, the 2025 assessment roll, special resolution, the public hearing. I hereby open the public comment for any comments on the 2025 Milburn Short Hills Business Organization, Inc. Special Improvement District Assessment Roll.
Jeffrey Feld, the poet section. I just have a few procedural questions. I wish that the attorney, can we maybe pause till the attorney and Alex come back into the room? 'Cause I think they need to be here with my comments.
Would anyone else like to speak in the meantime, so we could just?
I think that the whole public, any comments they should be here when we make them.
Now we're missing committee members, so
There should be starch and
maybe we recess.
We're gonna take like a 3-minute break. Thank you, everybody. So we will continue with the public hearing.
Again, thank you for taking that pause. Again, my name is Jeffrey Phil, from the Poet section. Regarding the tax assessment, as everyone knows, I'm representing the plaintiffs in the Bear Properties case. The case management conference that was supposed to be held today has been postponed till 2 weeks. A year ago, 4 of you.
Is this in reference to the
Assessment, yes. May I continue? A year ago, 4 of you delegated the authority to submit and prepare the Main Street, New Jersey application to the state, to the SID board. There was no application attached. In March, an application was filed. I had to file an open request to receive it. I filed a letter, making some objections. Mr. Grillo filed a letter replying. The state directed the town to change the boundaries of its Main Street, New Jersey application to be limited to the downtown area. Today, you're being asked to approve an assessment for 5 districts. Under the state statute, you have to look at because there's a special assessment. What is the direct benefit received by each of those individual districts? I don't know what 4 of the districts' benefits they receive, and it's in proportion why they are subsidizing the downtown area. And when you look at this, the SID has 5 districts. Best practices required each district to have its own separate SID. But you have a subsidy here. And the question is, what evidentiary report do you have to justify the same percentage for each of the properties located in the 4 other districts? You received letters from business owners, to my knowledge, who are not located downtown, in the downtown business area, to not allow the assessment. You have the ability to say that the assessment, it can be staggered, have different rates for the people that really benefit, because the key is the word, in the statutory word, is direct benefit. This impacts the equal protection clauses and substantive due process under our state and federal areas. Again, what evidence have you had that all the districts receive the direct benefit equally? And why should other districts pay? They're not located downtown area, especially in light of the state's direction to you to limit the Main Street, New Jersey entity, which is funded by the SID tax to do all these activities. Why should these other districts be subsidizing? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just want to say my hand was up before on 2 devices because I have problems on my phones, so just so you know. And then during that public comment, I just wanted to say that you should be tabling this hearing. So, but here we are, here's the hearing.
Yeah, if the name doesn't come up on the screen and it says iPhone, we don't.
Oh, okay.
Acknowledge it.
Because I had both my husband's, I don't know what his is on, so. Okay, we're gonna go back with the clock?
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So, I am in receipt, as you know, I do like a lot of homework. I'm in receipt of the SID assessment letter. And sorry, I'm gonna I think I grabbed the wrong one. In that SID assessment letter that I received, the notice, I got it somewhere like January 23rd. And it says, the Township Committee will consider objections to 2025 special assessment to be levied against benefited and accessible properties in the Township Special Improvement District. However, there are 5 districts. The amount of the, quote, the amount of the 2025 special assessment to be levied against your property. Think a moment and ask yourselves, what does that mean? It means, because I Googled it, it says the specific dollar amount that you will be required to pay as a one-time additional charge on your property taxes is in 2025 used to fund a particular local improvement project that directly benefits your property, such as road repairs, sewer upgrades, new sidewalks within the area, essentially is the cost of your share of the project based on your property's value and the proximity of the improvement. So I asked this question to Mayor Miggins. I'm going to ask you, Mayor Romano. This is a notice of a special hearing. If we are an objection to the special assessment, can you ask your attorney? We actually have 2 attorneys on this dais tonight. A special assessment, it's a tax. It's not a permit fee. It's not an additional fee. We are being taxed. And if we don't pay this tax, the tax department will use their tax remedies to foreclose on my property. So you're giving me 3 minutes in a public hearing, which is actually disgraceful and embarrassing, if anything, that if I want to appeal my property taxes, this is the proper procedure? I have 2 attorneys on this board. Have you given a legal opinion, Mr. Cantor? Can you tell me if this is a proper procedure and ethically correct, that this is the formality of how a property owner, and there happens to be 12 on Upper Milburn Avenue. I mean, I can go on and on. I've spent hours on this hearing in an objection, that you are not affording the 164 property owners that are being assessed by way of tax. It's not an extra fee. It's not a donation. You are assessing our properties that are levied.
Thank you, Ms. Urso.
So I'm only have 3 minutes, and so this is ridiculous. Okay, let it be on the record. You own this. Oh, Mr. Grillo, can you explain why we don't
Anyone
need
else?
5 districts?
Thank you, Ms. Urso.
Are you shaking your head?
Christine Best. I'm sorry, Milburn Township. I just wanted to make a comment, just in general. It would be really great to understand the allocations per, district at the very least. And, I mean, every person should you guys should have a spreadsheet to see the allocations by business owner, and to not have that presented in front of public comment, I think is really kind of a useless time of public comment, because I can't see what the allocations are to either support Perry. I'm assuming that she's completely correct. So just something for the future. And also going back to the tax remedy she talked about, one of the things that's important is, like, when I fought my taxes, I went to Essex County, courthouse, got denied, and then I went to Superior Court and, ended up settling with the township for myself. How does a business owner do that in the case when the taxes are levied here? If Perry's saying this is the only format, it's a very small amount of time to actually fight your case. And then just quickly, Perry asked me to ask about, there was a lot of chit chat from a select few during the SID budget hearing back in December mentioning $7 a year. Where did that number come from? Is it a calculation from the 6,813 households, which would be half the SID executive director's salary by way of ordinance allocated by the township? Those few members of the public who advocated and stated that they were happy to pay the $7 a year failed to include the additional $25K allocations to the town hall plaza, the expenses incurred by the employees, such as the wonderful DPW workers, our firemen, and our policemen that are present before, during, and after activities held in our town hall plaza. Is all of that money included in the $7 a year paid by the taxpayers? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jean Pasternak, resident. I have to say, just listening for so many years, going past 4 years, I guess now, about this unfairness issue with the downtown getting a disproportionate amount of the benefit of the SID. I just think it's incredulous that this body and the people that are voting here don't see that this is actually the case, and that it really isn't fair. It just isn't. The township doesn't own property to hold events in most of those other spaces, as I understand it. I remember Steve Grillo saying that. So, or maybe it was Jackie, but I really think that there has to be something that can be done to settle this issue, other than people getting really upset, a 30-year business owner having to come up here night after night at all these meetings and saying the same thing and getting no response. It just doesn't seem right. So I hope you'll bear that in mind. I think many of us do see this and feel very uncomfortable, but we don't see you, our elected officials, responding to it or doing anything about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is just about the SID public comment, right? So I remember when I was sitting up there and the SID came before us. And I remember Mayor Burstein voted no because she felt it should not include anything other than the downtown. I remember voting no because I was under the impression that Tara Prupus had a conflict. So here we stand. And I don't know, maybe we'd all followed Mayor Burstein, we wouldn't be in this position now. So that's how I remember things.
Thank you.
You know, I have to second what was just said.
Excuse
This is
me.
Charles Bambara, 28-year resident of Millburn Short Hills. I have to second what Jean Pasternak and Diane Egler just said. I'm sitting here and I've been attending meetings the past several years, and I see this issue coming up and up again. And it seems to me there's an injustice between the assessment and the distribution of funds from that. There certainly is an appearance of impropriety after the last elections that the SID held. So none of that seems to be addressed. It keeps coming up. Nothing gets done, and it's a legitimate concern of the residents. I think it's time to address it properly.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I will now close the public hearing. Would anyone like to address any comments?
I will. It's my understanding that the SID assessment role is the mechanism used to assess the properties within the SID boundaries and collect the assessment of funds to fund their budget, which was approved in December. The tax assessor prepares a roll based on the commercial value of the properties, and the SID director and board reviews all the rolls for accuracy. Tonight's function is to simply review and approve the assessment roll, correct? If a property owner has an objection to assessment that they're gonna schedule to pay, and they believe that amount is wrong, or the property is assessed incorrectly, there is a form for them to go through to get that in front of the right people, i.e. the tax assessor. Is that correct?
No.
No.
That's
It
false.
serves as a tax appeal.
Right, it becomes just a
It's not-
tax appeal.
Again, this isn't a dispute of the mechanism of assessment. It is a dispute of the value of the building, or the property,
No.
or the allocation of residential versus commercial.
Excuse me.
So that's why I want to fully understand this. They can go through the tax assessor, file a tax appeal with the tax assessor and get it and voice a concern there. So this is different than what was discussed in December for the validity of SID.
Or the
thereabouts.
budget, yes.
Correct. Okay, that's what I just want to understand.
Anyone else have any
Yeah.
comments, questions?
So, I've made my thoughts on this clear. I think the SID was flawed in its design. I think the flaws can be corrected. I think there are things the SID does that has value for the businesses in town. So, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but there are things we can do to make it more fair. Ms. Best, I think your idea of having allocation per district is a good idea. I think having that data would be helpful. So hopefully that's something the SID will consider. But, my position is now, and has always been, I think we ought to reevaluate how the SID is implemented. I think we ought to figure out a way to give business owners that pay into the SID some sort of direct representation, whether it's electing, one or two of the board members or some other structure, but we can definitely solve these problems, but there needs to be a willingness to sit down and actually take a look and reevaluate this. So I hope that at some point the other individuals on this dais will join me in reevaluating, examining and improving the SID. Because I would love nothing more than to get all of these issues put to bed and have the SID focus on its mission, which is to help the businesses in town. But, you know, I think we can resolve these issues. We just need to sit down and try. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Dave Cosgrove, yeah, I agree with Frank on that. I'd like to see us look at the structure of the SID.
I would, I guess, third it, because, you know, there's a lot of different methodologies we can look at and do and such, and you know, maybe it is for a fresh reevaluation. I mean, we had a former township council member saying she wishes she didn't vote go no, so yeah, let's understand, look at it, make sure it's the best path forward for everyone.
May I have a motion to approve resolution 25-059 which authorizes adoption of the 2025 Milburn Short Hills Business Organization Inc. Special Improvement District Assessment Roll?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Cosgrove?
Yes.
Mr. Sakamandy?
Yes, with the stipulation that we reevaluate.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes. Okay. Okay, we have nothing for all business, new business. Committeeman Stoller, you wanted to talk about board committee chair elderly.
Correct. So this has come up, you know, I brought it up a couple times just about an appearance of impropriety and such, and I've been told a lot of different things. I heard a lot of arguments trying to turn us into some debate about free speech or some kind of legal technicality, but that's just a distraction in my opinion. This isn't about silencing anyone or restricting political rights. It's about ethical governance and public record. The issue at hand is simple. Can one person fairly oversee public trust funds while simultaneously leading a partisan political organization? The answer, in my opinion, is no. And deep down, we all know that's true. Ethical standards exist for a reason: to prevent conflicts of interest and ensure that public resources are managed without political bias. No amount of legal maneuvering or rhetoric about the First Amendment changes that fundamental reality. This is not the debate about limiting First Amendment rights. It's about ensuring public funds are managed with integrity, without conflicts of interest or the appearance of political favoritism. It's not about impugning or besmirching someone. Ethical standards exist to protect the public's trust in government institutions, not to suppress political expressions. This is not an attack on political expression. Again, it's a defense of ethical governance. The community deserves to know that public funds are allocated fairly and without political influence. The solution in my mind is simple: separate the two positions from a head of a political chair and the head of a organization that spends public trust monies.
Would anyone else like to weigh in?
Yeah, I think Mr. Stoller makes a good point. I think there's, and we've seen examples of this, I think there are times when it can be seen that, you know, a head of a political committee being a head of a board that distributes taxpayer dollars, there can be an appearance of impropriety at times. I know there were a few incidents that have come up over the years. I don't know if the individual in question was chair at that time or not, but the point is, I think if you're the head of a political committee, and really this only affects 2 people in the entire town, then you shouldn't be the head of a township committee, subcommittee that is in charge of, you know, managing and distributing funds. So, you know, I think that in this particular case, since SID is a creation of the township committee, we should be able to make and amend rules that would apply to that committee. I don't know if we can do this across the board, but that's something we can certainly look into.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
I think I'd want to hear from our attorney. But, you know, not right now, but, you know, to ask him to take a look at it.
Deputy Mayor Cohen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we need a legal opinion, clearly. You know, I'm sure if there was any impropriety going on at any time, people in this town are not quiet, and it would certainly come to our attention pretty quickly, and we would certainly be able to address that. But you know, I would like to hear a legal opinion on this myself.
So, I mean, I could state that being a party chair is not an actual legal conflict from serving that role. However, I would like to look at the law as to First Amendment rights, and for limiting it to just a Republican and Democratic chair, if we could do that. And I'm wondering, is there any other people you'd like to limit it to? Because I think, given how much money the city spends, there could be other potential people you think could have a conflict if they were based on their business practices and what they do. So I'm just wondering, is there a more robust list of people?
It's potential, it could affect, I think, any, officer of those political parties, the local political parties, not just not just the chair of the committees. And it might also affect, I've given this a lot of thought, it might also affect combinations of people. If you had, two TC members on plus somebody else on a board or something. So I think there's potentially far-reaching consequences.
So, but when you
I'm sorry.
but when you say representatives from the Democratic or Republican committee, that includes some of us sitting up here.
Absolutely, yeah, but potentially, I don't know how you draw that line.
Right. I mean, the only thing I would want to add is I don't think it should be just, the SID. I think it should be every board and commission, because whether it's an advisory or not.
I couldn't agree more, right? And we put in place a nepotism policy last year. Now, just for the appearance of impropriety, I'm not impugning, I'm not besmirching, I'm not telling anyone somebody did something wrong, but from sitting up here as an elected public official, and as we see it today, there should be the separation. The head of one party should not be able to run something that disperses public trust funds and operates day to day where there may be some benefit that's gained. And I mentioned this earlier in my comment, this is not about the legality of the situation. It's about the appearance and understanding what's right for the township moving forward. I'm sure the legality, there's probably no legal law written down applying to Millburn Township and the head of the Democratic Party or Republican Party managing a subcommittee that spends public trust funds.
I don't think it matters whether they spend public trust funds or not. I think it's the appearance of it. So like
that's my point. That's my point.
You said, we're talking about two people.
Correct. Right. So and I thought it was admirable of you to step down from the Democratic committee when you were elected mayor. For whatever reasons, you stepped down, and we appreciated that. When I said, when I get up here, you hear my updates, 8 committees doing the work. I left the R and the D behind. This is about servicing the constituents.
I think we could tell by tonight the way we voted on certain issues. It was not party lines. And that's the way we worked last year, and that's the way we continue to work this year.
I think that's the point. We're elected and we're beholden to the public. And so when we get to office, we do hopefully put that behind.
Exactly.
We want to stay in office. However, the head of a political committee does not have that same sort of responsibility to the electorate because they're not elected, right? And their loyalty is perhaps to their party and their committee, as opposed to what's best for the residents of the town. So I think in light of that, perhaps you were right, Mayor Romano. Maybe the rule should be the heads of the political committee or officers or whatever it may be aren't able to serve as chair of any committee.
But
they can be members of the committee. No one's saying they can't be members, but they're saying they can't be chair.
I guess the question is, as the chair, just like the chair, the chair here, the mayor, they have one vote out of however many people that are on the committee. They don't have any more power than the other members. So do you then extend it to that they can't be on any committee at all? In any role, be it chair or member?
Why have a chair?
Why just the chair? I mean, the chair has no more authority than anything else. I also think in some committees, like the planning board and this one, that the chair is appointed by the members of the committee, and they are the ones who, and I think that's a good thing, because they are closer to how those meetings go and what they're looking for to accomplish as a committee. And if whoever it is that wins the respect of that committee to be elected chair, that's up to that committee. I don't know that those are decisions that we should be making on, for the SID, for the planning board, for the zoning board, for any of those, for the environmental commission. I believe they all, that one too, I'm not as clear on that. We did that one, but maybe I don't think we should, to be honest with you. If we did, we shouldn't. To me, that if you're on, the chair of the committee should be appointed by the committee.
Good points. So, Mr. Cantor, you'll, I guess, do a little research and see if there's.
Yeah, I'll
any-
report back to the next meeting. And then we'll go from there. If we can do it and there's a consensus, we can certainly draft.
Okay,
an
good.
ordinance.
And from that, the work you do, I don't want it to be 100% focused on the legality of it, because that's not the question. Question is best practices.
Oh, I don't, so Commissioner Stoller, that I would have to do a survey of like municipalities and what they do. I was gonna go into the legality of whether or not we could bar a chairperson from chairing committees.
You need to know that.
If we can legally do that, I don't know best practice, I think you said, what's best practice for this township, which is what I think you five are gonna decide.
Okay, thank you.
And related to that, I mean, we could look into Mr. Morreale's suggestion of coming up with some sort of code of conduct or code of ethics. If we can't bar these individuals or decide that we don't want to.
We already have it.
Oh, I was gonna say, I
We already
think.
have it.
Do we have one that's for
We could look at it.
across the board?
We could look at it.
I think we should do that regardless.
Members, yeah.
We could look at it.
Whether this happens or not, we should definitely have a review of a code of conduct and make sure that it has teeth.
And I think it's likely you probably can. You probably can mandate that no party chair can sit as chair, but I just want to double check that before I give you that.
So your initial inclination is you probably can mandate that.
Probably so.
Okay.
Very good, thank you. Okay, public comment. This public comment period is to allow for final comments from the community. When invited to speak to offer your comments, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and whether you are a Millburn resident and or property or business owner. Please do not provide your full address, seeing our meetings are recorded and readily available to the public. A reminder that in order to help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers shall limit their comments to 1 3-minute session.
Okay, Charles Benbera, 28-year resident of Melbourne Short Hills. I just want to make it clear that I personally do not believe that any one of you on the committee would ever make a decision that is contrary to the best interest of the town to suit your own purposes. I trust all of you. I think you've done an excellent job, and I commend all of you. And I'm going to go back to the Mayor Romano that I know from last year that didn't make that statement about avoiding the conflict of interest, because that's the way I think you feel. And
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
All right,
Finish.
well,
Finish, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna have my own opinion and I'm gonna hold, okay.
Jeffrey Feld, poet section. When you talk about the doctrine of appearance of impropriety, to put in context, when the SID was looking at this and they put their code of ethics of, it just talked about conflict of interest. It did not talk about the appearance of impropriety. And that goes back to what happened to the stale memo from August of 2020 that was done by a prior law firm. And you might also want to look at the Diamond Chip case where the whole planning board was disqualified. As to, let's go back to Mount Laurel, round 3, I think we really need to have an update where we are with the new judge, that being Judge Russo. We've never really heard what the status was, because last time there was a hearing, one of the issues was whether RPM was going to be given access to the property to do tests. The public doesn't know what happened because they didn't follow a motion. Have they been provided access to the property? Also, what's the status of the pilot? Because I think it's either time to cut bait. Also, I sent you a copy of a case that came today about equitable principles, the implied covenant of fairness. Also, you might start looking at Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson. about fundamental rights. And that goes back to the whole settlement. Where's the fundamental rights of the public suppressed and impaired when you approve that settlement without telling us the terms? And when you go back to look at the agreement, as to round 4, when you have your next public Zoom session, I think this might be tied to the litigation, that I think we should have a report that, because the January 31st deadline that was just happened, in Region 2, which is where we are, how many municipalities rejected the DC8 numbers? And what is the shortfall? And trying to determine, when I said look at the Belleville public notice, when you look at it, because Belleville is an exempt municipalities, I think we really need to look at that analysis of whether the exempt municipality should be included, because of all the housing that's been happening, they haven't done. And I read a reference to Newark that they built, they're gonna build like a 40-unit building, all market rate. How come they aren't subject to an inclusionary zoning? And the question we'll really have is, do we have to preserve that in our round 4 separate case, or do we have to really hope that the judge that's in Mercer County raises those issues? And I just raise that to you.
Thank you. Diane Eglo, I'm certainly glad you brought a second public comment back. It's Eglo, short E. Ben, Cheryl Burstein had voted no because she said we should not have more than the original boundaries. I voted no because I was under the impression that Tara had a conflict. If the other 3, I don't remember who they were, Alex, up there, had they maybe listened, we wouldn't be in this position. Frank, I don't know if you lived here when the Hessian House thing, they hired the partner from McCarter English. They did not want to be declared historic. They were never going to knock the building down. How dare you insinuate anything else about me? Never lie about me in public. I was on their favor that they did not want to be declared historic because it put certain constraints on them. I understand Alison Canfield wanted it historic, so it could never be knocked down and have public housing or whatever. Never lie about me, please. The other thing I'm going to say, Christine Bess and others, insightful, hateful remarks. If there was 18 cars parked at the High Center, how did we know that? This is how it started a long time ago, folks. A lot of anti-Semitism in the world. Hear me out. Neighbors spying on neighbors, neighbors reporting neighbors. How do we know there was 18 cars there? This is really scary stuff. It's enough with Trump. I never talk outside politics here. What Trump and Musk are doing to our democracy is unbelievable. Okay, so remember, folks, there's a lot of talk on Facebook, on social media, in the news. What is going on? Let's not allow this in Milburn Township. The High Center has an application in front of the planning board. Keep it in front of the planning board where it belongs. Keep your comments. I just don't even have the words for what I am seeing spread. Let's see. Glad you're going to be planting trees, Alex. Last thing, Taylor Park Gateway, you said there's going to be something to make that more beautiful. Last thing, if I have a couple more seconds, spent a lot of money looking at two-way traffic. That started when I was up there. Things take years, I understand that. But the two-way traffic, you never studied gateway to gateway. Now that Annie says building is gonna go in and we have the beautiful Wells Fargo, maybe the two-way traffic study should really be considering gateway to gateway with traffic lights and make them audible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Richard Seibert, resident. You know, I come to this meetings and a lot is talked about the SID. If 3 or 4 of you decided to get rid of the SID would be over. I believe that's true. If not, correct me. I think you should make the calls on what's going on. Committee member Sacamandi said, let's review it, take a look, see. If for some reason, and this is just hypothetical, a Republican head of the Republican Committee decided to be the head of the SID, current SID, there'd be a big problem. I think that would be a big problem, and I think Oh, she left. I don't think she'd be very happy about that. I'm an independent. There's a lot of people that are very unhappy with what's going on in the news today. Let's see what happens over the next 4 years. I mean, I'm for change. I'm for change. And you guys should be here for change as well. If you hear people like Perry Urso saying that she's not happy about her assessment or the way the SID works, I think it's important to listen to her. I really do. And if Committeeman Stoller says that he thinks it's not, look, there's a lot of stuff that's legal, but people don't like. If people think that having the head of the Democratic local party being the chairman of the SID committee, it should be looked at. I think it should be looked at and make everybody happy. I mean, what difference would it make if she's not the chairman of the SID? Would it change the SID? Would the SID not work anymore? It would still work. And I think she's big enough to say, you know what, there's a lot of people that don't want it. If I was her, I would say, I'm out. I'm not going to do it. Seems like a lot of people aren't happy. And the fact that she doesn't say that, it bewilders me. Tell you the truth, that bewilders me. This is a very smart town. We got a lot of smart people in this town that are saying this stuff. So it must have some value. Mayor, it must have some value if everybody's saying it.
Thank you.
Phil Kirsch, Milburn resident. I think as far as the question of this committee or board chair eligibility, interesting one. I think as one of the committee members pointed out, it's not as if the mayor as head of this committee or a board chair is unilaterally handing out the dollars. It made it seem that way, but it's not that way. I think Mr. Cohen had pointed out, which is true, that you have a board and I guess you try to elect the person, the most experienced, most qualified person to be the board chair, whatever board that is or whatever other position they have. And I think while you look at this and you look at eligibility, before you effectively shrink the availability of experienced people by ruling out certain people for certain reasons, you think if that's really necessary. I also feel that, we can talk about the perception of prejudice, but we have a lot of skepticism in society today, and we see it in these meetings. And you can have a certain number of people who have this perception, but there's no reality of prejudice. There's a perception. We have all kinds of perceptions. People have certain times have perception there's more crime, there's less crime. That perception of prejudice and there's prejudice in that without proof. So I think you got to be careful before you go down this route to have really good reasons to do it. I also think that as far as the SID goes, I think it's a good idea to re-examine some of the things in it. I also think that there are people I've heard in the last number of years here who are just against it. And they will come out with criticisms. They will come out with reasons. They will say, just get rid of it. They will not look at what it does for the town. And I think that's something else that, while it's worth reassessing, I think, for instance, I'm not sure what the lawsuit involves against it, but I think if that is dropped, I think there'll be a lot more of ability for the SID to go ahead and re-examine itself and maybe be reconstituted. But I think that my perception is that lawsuit, but I don't know what the reason for it is costing us taxpayers a lot of money, but also I believe that it puts some constraints on what can be examined, for legal issues of different kinds and the flexibility of what can be done. So I think we need to put aside our prejudices and our perceptions of wrong and our grievances for a while and maybe take a good look at some of the things in the SID that could be changed and possibly a code of ethics for board chairs. But let's take it that way objectively and leave politics and prejudice out of it, like everyone seems to believe. One last thing. I think some people seem to imply that we should go by the winds of what people say here. And while I think this is important, we are all part of that vocal minority. So there's a lot of feelings out there in the township at large that may have a different perception about this whole thing.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Debbie Frank, a Milburn resident. I want to echo what Phil said about looking at political affiliations and chairs and everything. I think he's correct on that. I don't see an A equals B or an A equals Z. But was within your purview to look at it, you should look at it. However, I do think that when it comes to the SID, I think there are a lot of things the SID does. And a lot of the things that the SID does are probably things that we, as people sitting here or the wider community, don't see, which is counseling individual businesses, helping individuals do things, all that sort of thing that operates beneath our radar, and there's no reason it should be on our radar. That's, you know, that's between a business owner and an entity that's set up to help them. However, that being said, I do think that for understandable reasons, which is where the most infrastructure is, where all that public events sponsored by the SID do happen in the downtown. They happen in the downtown, and any ancillary benefit that comes from drawing all those people in does affect the downtown. So I do believe that other areas in the town do have a legitimate complaint or a legitimate reason to think that they are subsidizing another part of the town without seeing that kind of direct social and benefit to their areas. And I don't know how that could be addressed, whether there's a way for the SID to do other events in other areas as well, to try to bring people into those areas. Excuse me. But I do think that that is a definite lack on the SID's part, and I can't imagine that that would engender a great deal of support for people who feel as though what they're doing is supporting one particular area of the town with those kinds of benefits that they don't see. So I do think that that's something that ought to be looked at, whether that means 5 different SIDs, whether that means some allocation otherwise, or less money on an assessment. That's in your hands, that's in the SID's hands, but I do think that that's a legitimate point. Thanks.
Wow.
Hi, Jean Pasternak. I just want to address a comment that I just heard. It's not about the person's prolific volunteer record or the character of this individual. It's about what is, I think, in dispute is, and should be examined, is the damage that the dual role serving, can do to the reputation of the SID as well as the town. Is it worth it? Why even have this appearance of impropriety? I mean, you talked about handing out tax dollars. Well, here's an example of handing out candy that was given by businesses by the individual we're speaking about. It does happen, okay? I mean, when I saw it, I have to say, it gave me a really bad feeling because I saw people who were running for the Democratic ticket for township committee standing there handing that candy out. Is that a big deal? You might think, oh, it's years ago, who cares? But it speaks to someone's intention and the fact that they didn't see that that was wrong. So I really think it's your job to not let that happen to our town. Anyway, everything you're talking about as far as examination, I fully support, and I am the chair of the Republican Party in this town. I would never, ever take that role on. And I don't think it is an equivalent to sit on a committee versus being a chair of one that has taxpayer funds that they're responsible for. I don't think they're the same at all. The other thing I want to say is I was at the hearing involving the Hessian House that evening. The McCarter English attorney, as I recall, said it was the worst meeting he'd ever attended, the way it was conducted, that he felt that was what was being put forward as an objection to making and having that house be declared historic was bogus and had no bearing. So I really do think that the recall of what happened that evening might be slightly incorrect. And the other thing I wanted to say is, as far as the high center, Diane, I know, I'm sorry, talking to you guys. The passion is there about things that really aren't relevant. People are coming forward to raise objections to it as an application to the planning board as a project. It has nothing to do with a religious affiliation. And for that to be kept going by someone who was a former mayor of this town is extremely disturbing to me. It's meant to chill speech and to put people in their place not to speak out. And that is absolutely, talk about free speech and First Amendment rights. To me, that is absolutely abhorrent at a meeting like this. And lastly, I have a question for you, Alex. Whatever happened to the long-term planning project that you were working on several months ago? Can you give us an update? Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jerry Kung, Short Hills resident. So we started out the meeting with this $75,000 grant from Essex County, which is great. It's great that we get our tax dollars handed back to us for something in our town that directly benefits us. But all this talk of inflows and allocations of the SID got me thinking, do we have an accounting for what we give and get back from the county? Because we give to the county about, what is it? The township budget's $60 million a year, so we probably give the county $60 million a year. And I've been coming to these meetings for 3 years now, so let's just say we've given the county $180 million in that time, and I'm seeing $75,000 in grant money. So I had to pull out a calculator because there's a lot of zeros involved. So 75,000 divided by 180 million is 0.04%. 0.04%. So I don't know, maybe the county has all this as public information. I hope it does. And I just haven't looked into it. But this is something that I think is pretty interesting because while we're talking about taxation and getting benefits from our taxes that we pay in, I think it might be a worthwhile endeavor to do this analysis with the county so that we can advocate more on behalf of our town and our residents to make sure that we're actually getting the value for what we pay for. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Jay Morelli, Township resident. I am encouraged by the open discussion on whether we call it a code of conduct, a set of principles, values, whatever we want to say, that the conversation has begun on what we think is right or wrong. I will say, I think there is an inherent conflict between party leads, elected party committee members, officers of parties, which by their nature they promote their party interests. Look no further than the hearings on appointing members to the cabinet. 50 people voted one way, 51 voted one way, 49 voted the other way. I find it impossible to believe that the parties do not impact their decisions. And that doesn't only happen at the federal level. That I've seen that happen here on this dais, not with this group of people, but with people that had higher political ambitions. I've seen them vote ways that bewildered me. My only conclusion was that they were motivated by seeking higher office within their parties. Do I have any proof of that? No, absolutely. Am I going to name names? No, absolutely. But to think that the parties do not influence the votes and decisions of people on those committees is foolhardy. So I encourage this group to sit back, think about not only the party leads, party officers, as someone suggested, and maybe even the elected committee members, and whether or not they should be put in roles that could be potentially influenced by their parties. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Best. I wanted to respond to Miss Iglo's, I'm sorry, Miss Aglow's comment about me. And I'm very saddened that people, I guess, judge a book by its cover, and I guess my name, Christine, kind of is the book that at my cover of my book for her. I want to tell people here a little bit about myself. Let's see, most of my boyfriends were Jewish. I grew up in Westfield, and most of my friends were Jewish, probably 90%. I married a Jewish man, his name's Ira. We're Ira and Christine, like Laverne and Shirley with a guy and a girl. My nephew grew up attending in a yeshiva. He was in the attacks on the 7th of October in Israel. He escaped. He sat in a bunker with girls screaming and crying all over them. They were bodies piled on top of there while he listened to moms. And he escaped from there and got home. I also am very familiar with ultra-Orthodox Judaism because he lived in a household in an ultra-Orthodox community. I value the Jewish community. I support Israel. I don't support unrealistic development that is harmful to a residential area. I want to be very, very clear about that. I also don't support people that use the term anti-Semitic, which Diane has, with her gang of ghouls, which I would call them, because that's what you're acting as, Miss Aglow. I don't appreciate being attacked. And if I want to publicly go on record stating that there's a hearing and I don't agree with it, I will. And I stand proud, and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to continue to do it because it is not right to violate deed restrictions that run with the land that are gold standard deeds. And also towns do have the right to look at them, and they do supersede zoning laws. That is a fact. I'm sitting and reading the Stewart Title, Restrictive Covenants, the Alta 9 series, a Vanderbilt Law Review case. I'm not even an attorney. I went to art school, okay? It's very clear. So anybody who comes against me, I will screenshot your thing. And don't think that I'm some weak person, Miss Aglow, that I won't seek any damages for any damages.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online?
There she is.
Hurry, I think you're on mute.
I don't think she started talking yet. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Hello? I can't see if it's muted, is it muted?
Yeah.
You're still muted.
No, we can't hear you. We can ask her.
Hold on, we're gonna try to do it from here.
She can't, we can't.
We can't unmute her.
Oh, we can't. Oh, sorry. Well, maybe she'll call back. Good evening.
Hi, thank you so much, Perry or so. I gotta get a new device. I have to, coincidentally, the SID budget that was approved in December, it's unfortunate that all the property owners who were in objection were silenced. I had taken the time from December to now, and sadly that the SID assessment role is quite different from today, from the one that was originally provided in 2020. This is how long I've been going at it. So I actually took the time and went through the whole entire SID assessment, and I tried to do it by district, and I actually asked help from the tax assessor, who referred me to the executive director, who then emailed me and told me I need to Oprah. So not to be accused of adding more fees to the township for Oprahs, I did the work myself. So according to the State of the SID report, the total assessed lots are 162. over the 5 districts. 2 are located at the Short Hills train station, which represents 1.23% tax assessment with a revenue of 1%. They pay $3,011.59. There are 10 assessed properties in Wyoming Business District. Represents 3.9% of the tax assessment revenue, and their assessment revenue is 13%. They pay into the SID $42,336.48. Morris Turnpike has 17 properties. They represent 15.43%, and their tax assessment revenue, mind you, 15.43%, and their tax revenue is 33%, equaling $72,208.95. Upper Milburn Avenue represents 17.28%. The tax assessment revenue is 10%, and they're paying into $31,405.42. Downtown represents 62.35% of the properties that are assessed in downtown. Their assessed revenue, tax assessed revenue, is only 43%, but they represent 62%. And they pay into it $99,078.83. So now when you see these numbers by districts, you wonder why you ask for KPIs. Well, you know, how about producing this type of information, and we wouldn't have to Oprah it, but I did it by myself.
Thank you, Ms. Urso.
They represent 43%, and everyone else is subsidizing.
Thank you, Ms. Urso. I'm sorry, your time's up.
Okay.
Good evening, Sarah Sherman, Milburn resident. I was going to compliment you on the, short meeting we were having, but that changed. I want to talk about the federal government. There's the steady drumbeat every day of what program is being killed and defunded. My concern is FEMA. And as soon as I heard about FEMA, I called all my federal elected representatives. I encourage others to do the same. We live in a community that floods. I have been an advocate for flood mitigation for the last 20 years. I am not new to this. I didn't arrive 3 years ago. I didn't arrive after Ida. And I am very concerned that some of the projects in the pipeline that are part of the FMAC may not be funded. Home elevation, any big project that we may want to do. And also, we have FEMA-backed flood insurance. That's the flood insurance that I have. 94% of Americans live in a county that has gotten FEMA help for disaster since 2011. So the idea that this program would just be decimated, handed over to the states, who would then have to find the funding for important projects that we need, is one that I find intolerable. So I encourage everyone to get in touch with Mikey Sherrill, Senators Booker and Kim. Tell them what you think. Don't write an email, call, leave a message, speak. Let's make sure that FEMA is not destroyed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll now close public comment. Would anyone like to comment?
Sure. So, Ms. Urso, I think you hit the nail on the head. The other districts pay a lot of money into the SID. That's why they were included in the SID. There are other people on this dais that know that as well. We've talked about it, both in public and in private. The reason that we don't remove them from the SID, I would, but the reason others don't remove them from the SID is it would leave the SID without enough money. So yes, those businesses on Morris Turnpike, they are not receiving the same level of benefit as the businesses downtown. Yet, they're kept in because they help pay the bills for the SID. So yes, you've discovered that. I think you knew that, but now you put some numbers behind it, which is great. Ms. Best, I've gotten to know you a little bit over the past few years, and I can say I know personally that you are not anti-Semitic in any way. And I think that the example of the exchange that happened between Ms. Eglo and Ms. Best should serve as an example to remind us all that in a community, you can object to a development or, a specific project for reasons other than religious reasons. So just because Ms. Best objects to the construction of a commercial building in a residential area does not mean in any way, shape, or form that she is against the religion who's backing that building, right? So I think we need to be careful about what we say and what we accuse people of, because we don't know the whole story all the time. And in most cases, what I find in our town is people are generally good. And when they stand against something, it's because there are reasons and principles, not because they are biased. So I just wanted to put that out there. Mr. Morreale, I was a little surprised that you didn't mention the obvious solution to all of these, partisan committee issues. The obvious solution is to move to a nonpartisan form of local elections, right? That would take away all of these issues and would have probably given us back at least 30 minutes of our time tonight. Mr. Kung, great idea to do an accounting of what we give the county and what we get back. From what I understand, we get very little back. I think it's more than the 75,000. I think, Joe D does throw us a bone here or there, but I think that in general, we get very little from this county. And I think that decades ago, there was actually a movement to try and get Milburn and Short Hills out of Essex County. I don't know if that's something we can actually do, but would be probably a good idea, because I feel that Essex County takes and takes and takes, but gives us very little, especially with regards to flood mitigation. Miss Emma brought up, the concerns about FEMA, and while we can't really do anything about that, being, a local body here, I would hope that the county would be able to allocate some funding to help us with some of our flooding problems here, right? So, if anyone from the county is watching, maybe you could throw us a bone and help us out with our flooding. Let's see, Mr. Kirsch, you had indicated that you thought that one of the reasons that we couldn't make changes to the SID was because of the lawsuit. Well, I don't believe that's true. And in fact, I think if we made certain changes to the SID, it probably would get rid of the lawsuit altogether. So I think that would be a very easy way to deal with these ongoing issues that we're having legally with regards to the SID. If we reevaluate it, make some tweaks, not saying to get rid of it, but I think we can do better. And Ms. Frank, I appreciate you speaking out for the businesses in town that aren't getting the same level of benefit as those downtown. I think you're absolutely right about that. Mr. Feld, so with regards to the townships that are exempt, as you know, we are involved in a lawsuit with 30 other municipalities, and that's one of the issues that we're fighting about in court. So our town is proactively trying to address that. Also, we didn't just accept our DCA number, we proposed our own numbers. So I would say from what our township is doing, we're really doing all we can at this point to advocate for ourselves in the next round. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
So, because I was gonna ask Jared a question. Jared, if you can, an update on the fair share litigation.
So I was gonna respond to Mr. Feld's comments. As far as the pilot agreement goes, it was the subject of our closed session, which took place before this meeting. So we have no information that can release to the public at this point, but when we can, we certainly will. But at this point, the pilot has not been executed, and I'll give a further update. As far as your question as to whether or not RPM was granted access to the property, they were granted access to the property. They conducted tests. Mr. McDonald and his administration, I think, coordinated that effort. I don't know if there was any further testing to be done, but I think they were on the site twice.
No, they were on the site.
One, twice, yeah. So that's complete. With regard to the fourth round question, as far as adjusting numbers, we are part of the Montvale lawsuit, but we did make a reservation in both the resolution and our complaint that if there's any adjustment to the numbers based on the Montvale lawsuit or any other mechanism, that we reserve our rights to adjust our numbers accordingly. So I think we're protected in that manner. If there's any other further questions?
Thank you. In fact, we actually put in the title of it under protest. Yeah.
And Mr. Feld's suggestion.
You wanna add?
Well, I can go. Starting with Mr. Khan, truer words have never been said. That must come out of my mouth multiple times a week, and Alex and the TC will tell you, we have to get value for the monies we're paying, roughly 50 some odd million to the county year in, year out. And we have to have some of that back. In fact, I've challenged the deputy mayor and the mayor to fight for us in Essex County with the powers that be and Mr. Cosgrove to make sure that they're hearing us, because we are an important part of Essex County. And from Ms. Sherman's comments too, I'm so happy to hear her understand that that's where this funding needs to come from. And we have to hold the county responsible. Now, we're going to ask some nice ask of the county, and we fully expect them to step up. And if they don't, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. What else I got here? Mr. Kirsch, I'm on the liaison to the CID. I actually sit on the board of the CID, and I see it day in and day out. They do good work. They promote economic activity in our town. And to think that there's not an appearance of impropriety, I had a discussion with the legality of it. The legality, we'll discuss here what we can mandate, what we can't mandate, et cetera. But someone out front kissing babies, shaking hands, passing out candy, as Ms. Pasternak suggested, becomes problematic in my mind, because I see the focus on that position as well as how it could cross over. I'm not impugning, I'm not besmirching, I'm not accusing Ms. Lieberberg of any improprieties, but the appearance certainly could be there that the person responsible for all the good that Sid's doing, this is, I do think we should look at it. We should look at some type of prorate, et cetera. We'll get into that down the line. But, and I love your counsel when I speak to you, you always give me good points. But from my perspective, that's how I see it, is that we should separate those positions. I had the same comment for Mr. Morreale, that he's a South, nonpartisan politics in town. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of Diane Aguilar and Christine Best. Christine Best has been a good friend. She calls me on the holidays. There's no person who tell me that she's anti-Semitic. I'll put that on the record here. I've put on the record before. We're all neighbors. We all have to live together and be kind to each other. This world's lost civility and it's lost kindness and it's replaced it with Trump this, Trump that, Biden this, Biden that. We need to get back to our community. This is what matters every day in, day out. We live together harmoniously. We don't want discourse like that. Thank you very much. That's it.
Do you think if we were nonpartisan, you wouldn't know who the Democratic TC members were and who the Republican TC members were? I'm sorry. Why do you think we wouldn't be talking about it if we were nonpartisan? I'm just curious.
Well, honestly, I think there'd be more independents, right, that probably ran. Because right now, if you're independent or unaffiliated, as Ms. Aglo proved a couple of years back, it's really hard to get elected. But if you look at the school board, where there are no parties, yes, people might be affiliated with a political party. It doesn't seem to matter because they're able to run freely, They don't need the backing of a political committee. And, you know, we have more qualified people that step up. We have more choice, more variety. And I think if we had nonpartisan local elections for the TC, we would see the same thing. I mean, as it is right now, I feel like, what is the percentage of people that are unaffiliated? Kind of like 40% or something? It's pretty high. Those people sort of marginalized because they don't really have a realistic chance of serving in elected office.
Yeah, and
So-
I completely concur. I mean, I changed my affiliation from independent, from Democrat to independent, been independent for years, to Republican, to run as a Republican because of you can't run as an independent and win in this town. If it was nonpartisan, everyone has an equal chance to win. I mean, I was called a racist, I was called all types of names, there were signs about extremist
So,
Republicans, et cetera, all over town. And my kid's like, Dad, what are you doing? I go, there needs to be change, the change needs to start locally, and this is what I'm fighting for. And literally, I'm
I
so
was-
thankful that the community got behind us and voted us in.
Well, I was also called names, but if we were nonpartisan, would we be having the discussion about the sit chair?
No.
She'd still be the Democratic chair.
Well, would there be a Democratic chair?
Of course there would.
Then absolutely, we still have
And
that
then there would be a
discussion.
Republican chair, we'd still be having.
We'd still have that discussion, correct?
Well, no, there's a fundamental difference because the political committees in town, right, whether it's Republican or Democratic, they're the ones that pick the candidates that actually have a
Correct.
chance of winning elections. If they're nonpartisan, then I think it doesn't matter, you know, who they are, because the elections would be nonpartisan and they wouldn't be having an influence in the elections.
Okay, and just one more point I wanted to make, Deputy Mayor Cohen and I don't need to go speak to the county exec, because you could speak to him at any time. So we
Oh,
don't have
and,
any
oh.
extra like influence over him.
It's all the pictures I see on social media with the three of you guys with him, I just thought you guys knew him or something.
No, we just, you know, he supports Milburn, and I mean, there's a lot of other, you know, monies that come in to the town besides the 75,000.
100% appreciated, and we're gonna have big ass.
Road
We're gonna have
infrastructure,
big ass,
but I just want you to know that.
When his has his arm around you, you're taking a picture, you
Also,
whisper, hey, we need more money.
Yeah.
Just saying.
All right, we won't, I'm not gonna go down that road because I'm not doing that with you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to-
Thank you, good night, everybody.